Okay, present levels. What should and shouldn't be included and how it drives accommodations and services. School is being very selective in what they want to include of their own assessments. And medical assessments that are in depth and not something they can or would assess, they are refusing to add except as an attachment. And no accommodations or services being provided for those deficits. Now, I don't have enough information exactly on what you mean by medical assessments. Okay. Understand that under the IDEA, there are educational performance areas. The educational performance areas are where we serve the child through services and goals. All right. So let's start there with regards to IEPs and specialized instruction, because that's where the present levels of performance really come in. What is the child's unique needs? Okay, that's where FATE starts. Unique needs are attached to their individual circumstances per Andrew F. Supreme Court decision. The child's individual circumstances are the child's diagnostic profile, all right, and how it manifests and impacts the child across their educational performance areas. What are the educational performance areas for which we develop goals and services? Now, don't get what I'm talking about confused with accommodations. Accommodations in order to have equal access and equality of opportunity. Okay? That's different than educational performance areas for which specialized instruction is necessary. Okay? Unique needs of the child, individual circumstances, diagnostic profile, and how it manifests across their educational performance areas of academics, communication, social emotional development, and functional independent living skills. Now, once your child gets older and near the point of graduation or 21 years old, we also throw in transition areas. Okay. But for the bulk, it is academics, communication, social emotional development that it can include behavior and functional independent living skills. Okay, those are the educational performance areas. So when you talk about medical evaluations, I mean, what does that mean? So does that mean accommodations or are those medical assessments or evaluations relevant and pertinent to these educational performance areas? Can you tie those assessments to the educational performance areas? Because if so, they should be considered in good faith, just like the school's in-house evaluations or assessments. But at the end of the day, present levels should be recorded across the child's IEP in sort of the explanatory section of the child about their strengths and weaknesses and those unique needs, so that you can then later in the IEP, where the substance of the IEP is, where the FAPE is located. That's what generates present levels of performance. And I'm talking about accurate baselines across those educational performance areas, not focus on academics, guys. Schools over focus on those things when that's not what the standard of law is. I just explained it. Unique needs, individual circumstances, diagnostic profile, not the child's eligibility category. Your child's diagnosis is not necessarily the same area for which they qualify for an IEP. Unique needs, individual circumstances tied to the child's diagnostic profile and how it manifests across the educational performance areas I just explained. Present levels of performance, which is a child's baseline. This is where they're currently functioning in this area of need. Lofty goal, that has to make sense. And then recording, how are we going to prove that the child made mastery? And then the team has to discuss how many service minutes per week or per day that the child requires in what setting. Is it direct services in a small group? Okay, choose which one. Don't allow them to do and. Small group and. Which one? Crap or get off the pot, guys. As far as IEP team, I see it frequently written in there to where the school takes liberty for themselves to be able to have this optional instructional. We can do it in a small group. We can do it one-to-one. We'll sort of choose. And I can tell you, if you let them choose, it's always going to be small group. Okay, always. It's just the easier thing to do. All right. At the same time, that might not be how your child learns. And so once you establish a goal and the team determines what service minutes are required per day or per week to accomplish that goal, it needs to be tied with a sufficient explanation of methodology. What instructional approach, what therapy, what reading program, and you need to be specific about these things. What needs to be taught and how does it need to be taught in this allotment of time in this location? So is that pushed into general education or do we pull the child out in order to provide this instruction? Everything has to be laid out in that way, starting with present levels of performance to where we understand the child and where their baseline is so we can accomplish this goal. And then we allot this amount of time taught in this way using this methodology or approach in this location in order for this child to make tangible, measurable progress on this goal. And how we measure the goal at the end of the school year is how we know whether the child made mastery, whether the child did, in fact, make tangible, measurable progress. That's where it all starts. So when it comes to that, yes, of course, the schools tend to be try to be clever with regards to what present levels of performance or what assessments they use because they try to tailor it in their favor. Okay, but once again, I don't really know what you mean by medical assessments or medical evaluations. And if you're talking about just parent provided psychological evaluations or let's say OT evaluations or speech language evaluations or anything else, I do not call them medical evaluations. And I intentionally do not call them medical evaluations. I call them just private parent evaluations that would benefit the IEP team across those educational performance areas, and I tie it that way. You start calling things medical evaluations, then schools will come back and go, we're a school, we're not a therapeutic setting. We don't do therapeutic stuff. And you just don't touch the language that triggers them. Okay, avoid it. Name it something else. Call it something else. All right, don't call it medical stuff because they'll say they don't do medical. When in reality, they do, they can, but they would need, let's say, a health plan for something like that. There would need to be looped in other professionals like a nurse to sign up. There are some nuances there to where there's consequences for using the wrong words, like medical assessments would denote something else in the minds of school personnel. And that's why we do have something separate from an IEP called the health plan, and there's many kids that require that. So just make sure that we're not using the wrong words when we're talking about what evaluations are. But that is the the, the hot take that once again I present in Advocates University. In fact, I just did a few days ago. Of course, it's a 2 hour long explanation of this stuff. I sort of summed it up for you. But this is a good way to get to a well developed IEP.